Om Satyena Labhyastapasa Hyesa Atma Samyagyanena Brahmacharyena Nityam Antaha Sharirehi Jyotirmayo Hi Shubhraha Yam Pashanti Yatayaha Kshinadoshaha Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. The Atman, the indivisible self within all beings, in all things, is realized by moderation, by knowledge, by austerity, and by veracity. All of these constantly cultivated. When the mental impurities disappear and dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds the Atman everywhere, existing in everything, even here in this very body. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And so we are coming to the tail end of our Divine Mother period with the Navaratri 9 days, 9 nights that we spent in Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco. And then Lakshmi Puja, which we celebrated in Seattle at a retreat that started on Lakshmi Puja Day. And now Kali Puja, which we had last night. Our shrine, if the live streaming audience could see it, is full of flowers and garlands put together by the hands of the devotees and offered. And all of us here today were there last night with that offering to Divine Mother Kali. And also a little class prior to it about the definition, as far as words can say, of who Mother Kali is. Good luck with trying to attempt that. Nevertheless, we can shine some light on her. And in this Kali Yuga, it would be very wise to do so, because she is, of course, not just a remover of obstacles like Ganesh is, who attends upon her, but the destroyer of obstacles outright, so that you can live in an enlightened state of mind, as you were meant to do, even here in this very body, as we just chanted. So with Mother season coming, autumn that is, coming to a close, we find ourselves at the first class of a 5-class series on the rust of spiritual life. Beautiful quote in the Dhammapada that I was considering the other day. Maybe I'll recite it to you in Pali next week if I can memorize it. But the English goes, lack of just slothfulness or lack of being aware is the rust of a watchman, leading to calamities. And then sloth is the rust of all things beautiful, all things good and beautiful. And then non-recitation of scriptures is the rust of monasteries. And then non-self-effort is the rust of households. So pretty much based upon that sloka, we might call it the corrosion of human consciousness. As I was making a chart for all of you to look at, you'll probably see that today. People are letting their consciousness, of course, which at the depths is stainless, go to rust and corrosion here on the surface of things, where it's most important that you keep everything sparkling and clean in your mind. Holy Mother said, it's through the mind that you get to Brahman. At this stage, the mind is very important. She knows eventually when you come close to Brahman, the mind will become no mind. as the Zen Buddhists say, or pure mind, as Ramakrishna has said. Pure mind is God. But in the meantime, you need this mind, this mental complex, to keep it in fine and subtle shape so you can see the light and move towards it, as we just chanted. Practice austerities and veracity and so forth. All of a sudden, the mind stays clear, and one of these days, all those gears will come together, and you'll see right through to the very clock of time and see through time. Beyond Kala, beyond Kali and her Kali's play. See? She'll usher you into this great light of consciousness, and having just even a glimpse of that transforms a person. So we keep at our practice for that reason. And perseverance is very important to her. So the rest of households then is non-self effort, that beings aren't continually doing their practices in families and in societies. And in fact, that's probably a good way to start us off, other than the corroboration of Lord Buddha, which is of course very beautiful to have. We have these teachings of my teacher here. See if I can see them here. I have lived in this country since 1947. This is Swami Shananduji Maharaj, my teacher in Portland, Oregon, for all those decades that I was born there and grew up there outside of Portland, went to high school and part of grade school and college there. So I found him across the river from where I lived after those school days and went to him and got initiated. So he'd been living there for quite a while. So he says, I have lived in this country since 1947, that is the US. And it is my prayer that the American people have spiritual disciplines in their individual lives, in their family lives, in their social lives, and in their national lives. Discipline there, let's see here, discipline in their individual lives. There can be no true freedom without discipline. So teach your children from cradle to the grave to live a life of self-control and self-discipline. So this is a Hindu Swami, Ramakrishna order, lived in the West for so long, and he's saying this back in 1947. He came and he was giving this lecture in the 1980s, where I recovered some of these quotes from that. We put those quotes in our Nectar of Non-Dual Truth magazine in talks that are transcribed, and you can read his great wisdom. So you can see that for all those decades he was sort of waiting on the Western people, not just to hear the truth, Shruti, from the ancient Dharma of India, but to actually begin to act upon it, bring it into their lives and practice it, as Swami Vivekananda was saying. You can't leave it in books and temples anymore. It has to come out and show itself, and then you have to take it and contemplate it and practice it and realize it. By the way, that's called Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava in Hinduism. In another age in Hinduism, Vedanta, it was called Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Well, either one of those triplets, triputis, you can use if you want. It just means to hear and then to contemplate and then to actually realize what you contemplate, put it in. And there's a fourth, Satchakara it's called, where you bring what you realize back into this life. That's not usually reported, and it's left as a triputi. But so we're finding, because of the rust of spiritual life in households, even in monasteries, with the watchman who's doing vigil, you should always be on vigil. And so we're finding that due to this rust that's corroding everything, overlaying it, we can't get to that shining truth underneath it. So we find ourselves backpedaling to try and find some instrument to sand away that rust. Remember, Swami Krishna used to say, if the needle is rusty, then the magnet won't attract it. So here the magnet is the non-dual Brahman, or even penultimately Ishvara, whom you're meditating upon. And the needle is you, your mind. It's become all rusty, you see, so that we can't get attracted to that ultimate force. So he said, what's the solution? Well, you dip the rusty needle into a solution of salt and water, you see, and then you just easily remove the rust. Well, the salt water is tears that you cry for yearning. That was one of the, probably the best English word we could use for the Bengali equivalent when he was talking about yearning for God. Because people would ask him, what's the way, sir? What's the way? That was like the classic question in India back there, 1800s, when he was at the Dakaneshwar Kali temple. What's the way, sir? What's the way? He says, you must cry a few tears for God. You must yearn for God. Then God will begin to come to you in various ways. So that salt solution is necessary to wear the rust off the human mind, and human mind has got different kinds of rust due to the different kinds of people. Like here he says, the West is busy elevating science to the highest pedestal. Yet it was science that split the atom to release a huge force for destruction. But Sri Ramakrishna has come to release Shakti power, split the atom of intelligence or of your ego and destroy the curtain of Maya. So I say that the scientist's craft must not become a tool in the hand of politicians. It must remain pure and stainless and think in terms of discovery of human welfare, human betterment, human elevation. These were things that would just spill off his lips, you see, all the time when he talked. So he had a mind definitely toward the Advaita philosophy and towards the teachings, but he was beginning to, because he had realized that, try and work that into our national life, our political life, our business life, our everyday life, our family life. So he would think about this and maybe get around to taking away some of that rust on the needle of the mind, or the nail of the mind, if you will. As we show you the bucket of rusty nails teaching in a bit here. So he would say things like that. For instance, the power of doing will not help the individual unless the power of being is blended with it. It wasn't just profound, long statements with lots of description, but he would come up with these little jewels too. The power of doing will not be enough unless the power of being is associated with it. So we're a nation of doers. We're kind of a world of doers here in the Burloka, especially in the Kali Yuga. And doing and doing and doing is, of course, action causes karma. And the karma is good, and the karma is mixed, and the karma is negative. And when you get an amalgam of this, nobody can tell where they're going, where they came from, who they are. And these problems then are the cause of misery and suffering. So without a clear mind, that is, a needle that's been dipped in that salt solution of yearning for higher reality, even the rust can come over the minds of great scientists, great intellectuals, can come over the minds of the priestcraft. That happened both here in the West, as we know, Christian, and also in India with the Brahmin priests. There's a rust that covers everything. So sadhana is the one thing to alleviate that. And if you get the mind shiny, you see, like a brand new nail instead of a rusty nail, then you have to keep it that way by polishing it every day. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, in Bengal, where it's so humid, the priest has to do these worships, like we did last night here. By the way, beautiful whoever polished the articles are shining last night in the semi-darkness. So these brass and metal, silver articles, you polish them real good. And in Bengal, you have to do that all the more because every day some tarnish will show up at the end of the day because of the humidity there, kind of like here in Hawaii. So he said you have to keep those polished every day because they have to be shiny in order to be fit to be offered to the deity you're worshiping. The image of the deity is you're really worshiping the actual essence behind, which is your own essence, behind the image. If Brahman's the food, and Brahman's the one that's offering the food, and Brahman's the one that's partaking of the food, then isn't Brahman also the worshipper, the one who's being worshipped, the articles of worship, and so forth? On all levels, see, that holds true, not just with food. Or you could say everything is a type of food. So if that's true, then you have to keep this practice going so that every breath you take and every moment that goes by in time, that you're experiencing the freshness, the newness of Brahman. And your mind is always aspiring, it wants more. In fact, speaking of Lord Buddha in the Dhammapada, he said it somewhere in there, some souls are like swans. See? They leave the lower mountain lake for the higher mountain lake. Lower mountain lake's fine. Most people never make it that far, see, and enjoy the beauty there. But these souls leave the lower mountain lake and they fly to the next elevation where it's more pristine. The water's pure, the air is pure. Then not content there, they want to go to the next higher mountain lake. So this is the way the aspirant or the sincere aspirant feels about truth. And we were saying before the class began here is that there are a lot of people who drag their feet once they get the mantra, once they get the practice, once they get the instructions from the Dharma teacher. You know, they may contemplate a little bit and then fall out, or they drag their feet the whole way. They don't come to class. They don't put themselves in the atmosphere of the divinity, the actual divinity that's living in the moment right now. And so for that reason then, this rust begins to accumulate, habits and that practice that keeps your mind in a fine and fettled shape is encouraged and supported by the sangha, the people you're around, and by the teacher, and by hearing the scriptures and so forth. All three of those are called the triple gem, by the way, in Buddhism, Tibet Buddhism. So the triple gem has to be Ayu Punya Jnana, it's called. And so that has to be kept first and foremost in the mind. And so you have this veracity, you want this onward going thirst for the truth. And so he said you have to keep those articles polished in the atmosphere, in the temple, so that no tarnish will prevail on them over the day. So that night you can offer them, and the next day you can offer them. So you're always polishing. One of your duties as a brahmachari probably is to polish the articles. In the same way, then, the mind has to be polished every day with spiritual practices. Basically, the 4 yogas are a good way to keep that in mind. You study the scriptures and memorize them and contemplate them. That's manana, or yukti. And then you practice your bhakti yoga, that is, yearn for God, do your worship, offer flowers, incense in the altar. I mean, just to have an altar in your home would be a good thing. Don't worry about these people who are talking about, oh, that's just dualism or something. They don't know what they're talking about. Thousands and thousands of people have reached salvation by ritual. And you want to take that away from them? And they're not ready yet to understand non-duality? It's not the way to proceed. Like some people say, let's just give up all religions and there is no God. That would be the best state for all of us if we agree on it. But Swami Vivekananda begs to differ. He says we have to go beyond the Quran, we have to go beyond the Gita, we have to go beyond the Bible, but not by casting them out, by studying them and knowing what's in them. Then we can go beyond them. We can also come back to them and use them for other people who don't yet understand the teachings. And one religion, if that one religion is Advaita Vedanta and it encourages the inclusion of all religions in its scope, then we would say yes. But if it does away with any religion of any culture, just because it's supposedly inferior, or it's in a dark time, like our Christianity is in a dark time today, then it can't be thrown out. It has to be included, you see, and resurrected in the light of the Dharma. So the true Dharma is not an opinion, it's the truth. And once you have it, you exude it. But in order to have it, you have to be always in a pure state. So every morning you have to get up. Every breath you take has to be in consciousness, and the food you take in consciousness, doing the mantra in consciousness, meditate in consciousness. So those are the other 2 yogas, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Then you have meditation, and that would be probably better studied in an 8-limbed version. than just, I think I'll sit for an hour and see what happens. And then you have karma yoga, which is the yoga of action. So this is going to be good for your whole life. You see all four of these parts of your being, the studious, the contemplative, the devotional, and the active, because we all have all four of those in us, but one is more prominent over the other three. So we want to bring these three that are less developed up to the level of our most prominent yoga and become well-rounded. That's my vision of the perfect devotee of the future. I'm quoting Swami Vivekananda, but I happen to agree with him, as in all things. I think I had one thing I disagreed with the readings in Swami Vivekananda, and a few years later I got over it, had to agree with him. It was about the Westerners, but I won't repeat it here. So, the rust of human consciousness, the corrosion over human consciousness is the subject of this 5-class series, and I've created already 2 new charts for it, and I've colorized 2 others. So we'll see those this week and next week, and it's going to take us in some interesting trajectories that will reveal to us the art of spiritual living and life, and what maybe many of us have forgotten. Because I was just saying, if you drag your feet and you begin to fall out, then of course you're becoming a weight on the whole process. It would be better if you weren't able to adhere to the path, just to turn away and not be a detractor. You should never be a detractor of the Dharma simply because you yourself don't have enough strength yet to master it or to even understand it. Always be a supporter of the Dharma, even from a distance, because this is the only thing that's going to help humanity. Morality and ethics is just a minor step along the way. To know the difference between good and bad puts you with the good. You see. But then all of a sudden you're against the bad, and the bad are really the fallen and the lowly that you need to be helping. Sri Ramakrishna told that to Swamiji before he came here to help us here in the West, us fallen and lowly ones. Because basically rich and prosperity, but we're fallen and lowly as far as spirituality goes. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to be doing practice. We'd know we're the Atman, but we don't. So he told Swamiji, he said, the sick don't need, the healthy don't need a doctor. See, so when you go to the West, it's sort of like Lord Vashishta was told by Lord Brahma in Vashishta's yoga, you have to go down there and look for these certain people that are ready to receive the teachings and give it to them. There'll be some naysayers, and there'll be some people who are already realized. They don't need to hear your discourses, you see. So you need to look for those people that are in need, you see, and who are interested. Apathy won't do. You can be interested at the same time court apathy, and that's really an indecisive and indeterminate condition that we see many of the Westerners in. They have this interest. Vivekananda called it straw on fire. They burn up when they first hear it. You see, light up. But then straw doesn't last very long. All of a sudden they're lagging again. Lagging and flagging. See? So need to keep up that exuberance of your first intention. The courage of your convictions. These are things I repeat out of our Western lore that would relate to this kind of topic. So, yes, here in my usual preamble to the actual subject, all of these things come to mind because I have been thinking about them for weeks as far as what I would say at the first of these 5 classes and how I would go about conducting them. So, along with the charts, I'll show you some fine sayings of Swami Shananduji out of that. I had selected a few others here too that we don't need to change the chart to them, but I had them up here. Like this one, we're just talking about the yoga of meditation. The West has not accepted the Raja Yoga method. That's the method of meditation and the 7 limbs leading to samadhi. If if the method is accepted, then you will inevitably contemplate Shakti. So in the course of studying the eight-limbed yoga, Shakti will appear to you. First, you'll have food and you'll have breathing and posture, and then pretty soon you'll connect to psychic prana. As soon as you've connected to psychic prana, which is more toward the kingdoms of heaven within you, then Shakti will start to become apparent to you. Oh, there's a force guiding me. There's something sending my consciousness along subtle passageways in my sleep and at the time of death. So I bow to her and I propitiate her, just like we did last night here in our puja for several hours. So you become a worshipper of Shakti, dedicated to her. He goes on, what is Kundalini Shakti? By splitting an atom with the help of a reactor, using uranium and plutonium, you can release its bottled up power and cause death and destruction. However, Sri Ramakrishna stands not for nuclear power, he stands for spiritual energy, Shakti. This infinite intelligent energy is conscious, constructive, creative, blissful, and beneficent. Through her, one does not cause death, one conquers it. How beautiful. So, such a well-thought soul, the Swami that taught us in the West. And last living monastic disciple of Sri Sharda Devi when he was living in his 90s. In his 90s in 1990. That's when he was there among us. And I got to accompany him and many times through the 80s and 90s, in the older part of his life. So these are some of the beautiful things that around practice that we want to entertain. This is also good. Buddhism stresses self-effort. So the rust of households is lack of self-effort, right? Rust of monasteries is lack of recitation of Scripture. So if you're in a monastery, you have to recite these scriptures every day, even if no one's listening, because you're purifying the atmosphere when you say these words. And you're polluting the atmosphere when you say words other than those. How's the weather? Immediately the weather god hears that. You insulting me? Cause rain and destruction on you. Or just insipid things. These other quotes of his come to mind, but I'll stick with this one if I can. So he says, Buddhism stresses self-effort. Christianity places the accent on grace. That is predestination and grace. But Sri Ramakrishna was always harmonizing, saying grace and self-effort must go hand in hand. So it's not one or the other in this case. It's that you need to consider both. And it's not just either Vedanta or Christianity or Buddhism and Judaism. You need to consider this whole bouquet, because all the religions are different colored flowers in the hand of the Divine Mother Shakti. And she's the one that gets the teachings out through the seers and illumined souls of different religious traditions of the world. Yam Brahma Varnendra Rudra Marutahaштan Bhanti Deboishtavoy Vedai Sangapada Kramo Panishadoy Gyanti Yam Samagaha, said in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, that we salute the leader of our souls, our eternal salutations to that one who is the truth of life and existence, and whom the saints and sages of various religious traditions call by different names. That's a mouthful. A mouthful of universal teaching. See, it makes you sit up straight, breathe, and feel inspired. And like you've got the tiger by the tail. Now, hold on. Don't let go. Go on the full ride, right to the end. Your self is not, your real self is infinite, not finite. Your real self is immortal, not mortal. Your real self is divine, not sinful. Your real self is birthless as well as deathless. these sayings coming out of this great soul who lived amongst us just recently. And he wants you to get to the inner essence of these religious traditions too. There's a rust that we're talking about right now that's over your philosophical body. It's called Bhranti Darshana. And it's called unclear seeing. Bhranti means deluded, Darshana means seeing. So even amongst the philosophers, a rust collects on their thinking, narrowness. See, and they restrict themselves to one school, and like with blinders on, don't look anywhere else. As if religion can only be contained in one school, or philosophy. See, saw a bumper sticker just in Portland a couple of weeks ago when I was there for our Navaratri. It said, God is too big to be contained in one religion. If someone thought, well, that's a good bumper sticker, and someone bought it and then put it on their car and they drive around Portland with it. That's not making Portland weird, by the way. That's making Portland wise, when you consider something like that. The saying there is, keep Portland weird. I disagree. Let's make Portland wise, because that's going to lead to enlightenment, to our realization of our highest essential nature, which is the purpose of being born in a human body in the first place. So we stay to the main purpose of this. See? So and so some of these beautiful sayings are there. He would say, the Judeo-Christian faith is dualistic. Why dualistic? Because it accepts that behind the body and mind complex there is an underlying reality called the soul. But that is just the ego. They mistake it for the soul. It is that ego-mind complex that dreams itself from heaven to earth to hell. So as long as you're still holding this dream of heaven to earth to hell, transmigration, which is movement in consciousness that doesn't move, then so long are you then a dualistic, restricting yourself to that one little narrow school. You're not stepping out and seeing what the enlightened souls like Meister Eckhart or like Lord Vashishta or like Patanjali or Swami Vivekananda say about non-duality beyond religion. These words, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, they stand as blocks against man's spiritual progress. He said that. Sri Ramakrishna told it. So, again, we're not going to throw out the religions, we're going to find out what's there in them, whether it's truth or a bugaboo, as Vivekananda said, and then we're going to realize what's beyond them, with their help, with their aid. So all of that is getting rid of rust at different levels, see. The rust over human consciousness or individual awareness. That's why I started out there. I hope that, he says, I fervently hope that some spiritual self-efforts and practice will come into our social lives, our individual lives, our political lives, our national lives. That's what he's waiting for. That's why he came into the body, and why he was here for 40, 50, 60 years, telling us over and over again to begin to do spiritual practice. It's the only thing that's missing out there. Everything else seems fine. You've got enough food, you've got enough wealth, you've got plenty of cars, you've got enough pathos, you've got enough war. See if that's what you like. So what about enough sadhana? Do you have enough of that? Got sadhana? Plenty of milk out there. Got sadhana? So that's my opening as far as sort of defining that this rust isn't just on our everyday life, but that's kind of the idea. When Buddha says lack of self-discipline is the rust of households. We can chant that next week to open our class so we remember it. Now, there must be allowed, and it occurred to me that this proclamation of having to do spiritual practice is not a judgment. It's a suggestion or an advice or a correction on your way of life that is for your highest good. They make no bones about this, you see. Children have to be taught. And if you're spiritual babies, like Vivekananda said when he found us here in 1893, advanced in so many other ways, with the ego inflated around its power, but your spiritual life is still in an infantile, puerile state, then you have to submit to be taught these higher truths. So it occurs to me in India, when they think about that, they said there are 3 classes of devotees: Pasu, Virya, and Daiva. Pasu means animalistic. Virya means heroic. And Daiva means divine. So amongst the spiritual devotees, that is those who love God and are trying to realize God, that's what's going on. So here's the chart I put together on that. And we should look at that because it will be a good precursor, if you will, or symbol to everything it is to come, because you practice your spiritual life on the level that you can manage it. You can't overdo it. See, like say, I think spiritual life to me is fasting, so I think I'll go 21 days without eating, see what happens. Good luck with that, you see. Or maybe I'll practice Mauna for a long time, you see. But I don't know really why I'm practicing Mauna, because I don't have a guru who tells me why. And the scriptures, I haven't consulted them, what they say about silence. Shankara, for instance, I was sitting here 4 or 5 weeks ago telling you that the first doorway to yoga is silence. First doorway, according to Shankara. He adds that even before yamas and niyamas in the 8 yoga. So you must settle down and be quiet. Still your lips. And of course, still your mind would be better. But most people have to start from the outside and proceed to the inside, because all they believe in is the outside. So words are going to show up their great importance, that is, that they contain Shakti power when you shut up. Shut up, we used to say to each other as kids, right? Oh, you're so dumb, shut up. See? Well, we were both right. We were dumb and we should shut up. And then maybe we'll learn something, you see. So in the level of Pasu then, the designation that you're animalistic, if that's what you are, is not an insult. It just means that you still have pleasures. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, those kinds of beings mix yoga with boga. Nice that those words both rhyme. Yoga is, of course, practice, means to purify yourself. Boga means enjoyment. So there are some beings who are devotees of the God, of Lord, you see, and Mother of the Universe, but they still have these desires to satisfy, so they're trying to do both at the same time. They'll probably find out that ultimately that's not going to work, but along the way it's a way of making progress for the Pasus. So there you see them there at the bottom. You see some of the points about Pasu. And then we're talking now about devotees, but let's take my quote at the bottom here. The 3 classes of living beings pertain to the devotees of the Lord and Mother of the Universe, but they also apply to worldly and unillumined souls. So the devotees, they know about the existence of God. They're preparing themselves, qualifying themselves in different ways, you see, for that. But the unillumined don't know about the existence of God. They even deny it or are just completely unaware of it. And so this teaching of the 3 levels also applies to them. So it goes on to say, the spiritually awakened fall under categories, moral and ethical beings. The spiritually unawakened fall under the categories of moral and ethical beings, 1, restless and activity-driven beings, 2, and slothful, greedy, and lustful souls, 3. All according to their respective karmas influenced by the 3 gunas. You know those kinds of teachings already of the 3 gunas. So basically this is the triple-fold designation of those who are unillumined and not aware that there is a higher consciousness in existence or within them, either way. So we should say that first. We're not really talking here so much about those beings. There are moral and ethical beings out there who are good, but they're still, as Swami Shananduji's quote just told us, still seeking heaven, earth, hell. So they're not very well informed about Almighty Father, about Brahman, about Allah, about non-dual awareness, about Buddha nature, about that which is beyond worlds, beyond movement, beyond time, beyond space, beyond karma. They're mixed up in their karmas. Now, if you jump to this level of pasu, virya, and daiva amongst the tantrasists, because this is the tantric designation, maybe we should read that quote next. Vedanta prescribes intense austerities utilizing discrimination and renunciation. Only a few strong beings can bear these. But Tantra takes into consideration the weaknesses of living beings, their lower appetites, and love for the concrete. It combines philosophy with rituals, meditation with ceremonies, renunciation with enjoyment. Both systems aim to train aspirants to meditate upon their identity with ultimate reality. That's from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, early pages of that great testament. So there you see right away these two great rivers of Vedanta and Tantra, how they have the same aim, to teach you to meditate on your supreme identity, whether you call that Paramatman or Purusha or whatever you would say, Buddha nature, but they do it by little bit different flows and eddies in their rivers, see. And Tantra quite often can then make it possible for people to gain some enlightenment, say through rituals, like, so they blend the ritual with philosophy, blend ceremony with meditation, and it's a great combination. It's rather like saying jnana with bhakti, two wings of the bird. If you have love for God, but at the same time you're involved in studying the scriptures, then you've got this rust-destroying elixir of jnana, because you only get enlightened through jnana yoga. There's no other way to get enlightened. Without the jnana yoga, the other three are ineffective for a long, long time. So you need the jnana yoga, directly quoting Swami Shananduji. So when the jnana yoga is instilled, meditation becomes natural, bhakti is natural, and karma yoga becomes pure. See? You're doing everything out of knowledge, out of wisdom. All your acts are done in wisdom, which is exactly what Krishna says in the Gita. If you're doing your actions without wisdom, they bring karma upon your back. So, a good treatment there of Vedanta and Tantra for those of us who happen to be walking with one foot in each world. We're worshiping at the same time we're studying. We're meditating at the same time we have to act. Act in action and inaction. So don't be confused about it. Just know that Vedanta, especially in its Advaitic form, very few people can bear the strict austerities and the non-dual renunciation of the world that's necessary to really take that path to its fullest and final end. So that's why you see not too many people in the Vedantic fold yet. You see, it's an underground river we've been talking about. And a lot of people more in the Bhakti fold, not just in Christendom and Judaism, but in Hinduism too. Many people in the Bhakti fold. So this is all something that's coming out and coming clear. So now let's go down to Pasu, the animalistic, and see some of the bullet points. Of course, there's the two Bengal tigers. Nice image because these teachings are fresh out of Bengal in this age. So you see there, the Pasus are striving to perceive the difference between the real and the unreal. Now look quickly up above. The Viryas know the difference between the real and the unreal. Now look at the Daivas. They see beyond the real and the unreal. So this is three different levels of understanding, you see. Do you see this? So at the Pasu level, they're still trying to perceive the difference between the real and the unreal. And so because they're involved in their pleasures and their various things and they're getting karmas from them, and these things that they're getting aren't eternal and aren't constant, then they keep being let down by the world. Somewhere in there, their desires can get fulfilled if they take to the Dharma. We know that's one of the rules, right? 4 qualifications, basically. Get the Dharma, then your desires will be fulfilled, then you'll get wealth, then you'll get enlightenment. Called the 4 fruits, Purusharthas, of Divine Mother teachings. It's right there, one of the very first, earliest of Divine Mother teachings, right out of Shakti's personal fold or store of Dharmic wisdom. Dharma first, you see. So since they are still unsure, the Pasus, going back and forth between what's real, that is their meditations and their devotions to God, and what's unreal, all the happenings and phenomena in the world, then they run this risk. They're still striving to perceive the difference between those two with a concrete understanding, see, that allows for no compromise. So compromise then is still there in the Pasus. And their saving grace is that they've taken refuge in the Lord, the Mother of the universe. That will correct them again and again until they finally get the point. So I want to take all 3 of these, you see, first, the top lines of each of these bullet points, because that's how I have determined that the main philosophical difference between these 3 classes of beings that the Tantras cite. One is trying to perceive the difference between the real and the unreal. The other knows the difference, the heroic, obviously, because they're busy helping souls to get over the unreal. See? But up there at the top, and almost incomprehensibly, the Daivas see beyond the real and the unreal, as if that's a duality that they finally got over. So it must be a very subtle and high state of consciousness that they've reached, to where they're not even affected by such philosophical gobbledygook as, oh, that's real and this is unreal. See? That happened back at the discrimination phase, or is trying to happen to the Pasus. All right, the second point under Pasu: eagerly pursue enlightenment while satisfying their desires. So they are very enthusiastic, you see. They want to know the truth, and they'll wake up one day vowing that they're going to realize it. The next day they'll wake up pursuing some enjoyment. Sound familiar? Westerners, you people of the world, see, those of you who love God but are still trying to realize it, what it is, who it is, and that thou art that, those levels. So the constancy there that Holy Mother wanted, the perseverance until constancy comes, so that you wake up every day and go to sleep every night, and you even dream, and in deep sleep you even see the seeds to it, that all of this is to be transcended. See? Even the real and the unreal, ideas like that, to be transcended. So you must be pursuing enlightenment with every little thing, with every little thing. So they say this about lust. If you have lust, lust for God. If you have anger, be angry that others have realized God, but you haven't. If you have jealousy, be jealous of the enlightened. Because this is how you take these negative passions and you transform them. Finally, one day I wake up and my ignorance is gone, utterly gone. Because no one can conceal the truth of Brahman. It's like trying to hold a flame in a cotton cloth. Ever tried that? Well, let's do this experiment. Let's burn down Eagle Creek, as the example. Let's take a ball of cotton, you see, and try and put a wick in there and flame and try and cover it with the cotton. Poof. Burn your hands and burn the forest down. So that's what the song says. Who can conceal the truth? Who can hold a burning flame in a cotton cloth? So that's how clear it will become to these beings once they awaken from their various nocturnal meanderings in this kind of dimly lit land of real and unreal. That they haven't really gotten it clear yet. The world is to be renounced. Nivritti. That's one of the teachings out of Sanskrit. Nivritti, to be renounced. What's to be renounced? The 5 elements, the 5 senses, the tanmatras, the fourfold mind, prakriti, Nivritti, all under the nivritti category. You renounce them as soon as you see them. In other words, you see through the ruse. That's a cotton cloth pulled over your eyes. What to speak of over the fire of truth? When the minute you saw it coming out of the womb, you should have said, I give it up. Wah, I give it up. Because that's what the realized souls do. That's why Christ left his parents at 14, and Shankara left his parents at 12, and so many great souls left the world at a young age and said, I give it up. This is a ruse. This is a dream. This is a mirage. This is an illusion. This is not real. So they're very clear about it at the outset. So the pasus aren't clear about it. It's a good way of saying it. Also, they mix yoga with boga so as to enjoy pleasures. And that lasts for a while. And they do enjoy. In fact, they enjoy exquisitely sometimes. And until that enjoyment becomes old, you see, and it gets replaced by something higher and higher. Many of us have had that experience. That, food, that's fine, I can take it or leave it. But other people are like so much into their food, that's almost their whole life. Or work. See, if we're talking about this lower designation of beings, food, work, that's pretty much their life, and their pleasures after work, and their sleep. See, so these things get replaced. Your attraction to them, your obsession sometimes with them, like work, get replaced by something higher, and you go towards a virya state. Pretty soon now you're sitting around thinking, well, I've got everything I want, but these poor people out there are suffering. What can I do to help them? As soon as you think that way, call it altruism or virya, then you're on your way to enlightenment. You're on the way to a higher state of consciousness. We'll look at that in a minute. The pasus also still cherish the individual ego over the cosmic ego. Do I love God first and foremost? Is what you need to ask yourself at that point. With all my heart, all my soul, would I step in front of a bullet for God? Like if someone came at my teacher with a gun, would I step in front? See, do I love the cosmic ego more than I love my individual ego? Well, maybe you won't know that till something like that happens. Hopefully it may never happen to you. But in the meantime, what should happen to you is this absolute resolve that you love God first and foremost, that God is all that exists. I mean, this is where the Daivas are living. They're living at this level. I've seen it in them. And they're not about to give that up for anything. Riches, poo. You see? I mean, that's why it's sung all the time. Japane kyun chhod diya Rama naam, Japane kyun chhod diya Rama, Nama Japane kyun chhod diya, Krodha na chora, Chudha na chora, Krodha na chora, Chudha na chora, Sattavachan kyun chhod diya Rama, Nama Japane kyun chhod diya Rama, Japane kyun chhod diya Nama, Japane kyun chhod diya. Bit of calisthenics out of my old days when I was a better singer. But what he's saying is, oh mind, why have you given up uttering the holy name of Ram? When you should be renouncing your anger, deceit, dishonesty, you have given up your integrity and sacrificed your love of God instead. You flatter the millionaire, yet forget to praise Ram, though Ram is the owner of the entire universe. Your mind dwells constantly on sense objects, mundane habits. tempted by that which has no eternal existence. Why are you letting your mind rust? No, that's just to segue in. So with this kind of rust of attachment, brooding on sense objects, being jealous of the millionaires or desirous of wealth, all of that, that's not even in the mind of the divas anymore. They're just so much in bliss without all these things. They've proven to themselves that actually those things cause suffering. Those things cause attachment. And when they go away, they cause despondency because you were attached to them. So they're better off without them. So they sleep, they dream, they go into deep sleep, and they waken like all of us, free of those things. Can you imagine a consciousness like that? What to speak of a world like that? Where if you sleep at all, it's all peace and bliss. And you wake up and it's the same, all peace and bliss. As if there was no change in consciousness, because ultimately Brahman doesn't change. And so they decide to remain in Brahman. Remember our last class series? What was it called? Negligence of Brahman and Doorways to Yoga. We were sitting here just a few weeks ago speaking about that. So we're not harping so much as declaring, you see, that this is a step we need to take in this day and age, particularly in the West, because since we are in the West, it'd be good for us to stick to our own country and take care of our matters at home. We don't need to shoot rockets into space or go take on the problems of other countries. We need to be here. And some people say that, but they're not saying that in the right way. We need to be here, why? To take care of our poverty, take care of our impoverished, to take care of our sick, to take care of the street people? No. We need to take care of ourselves so that poverty will go away, so that street people will not fall into suffering anymore, so that everything will right itself. It's called harmony, and it's called being in yoga. And until you're in it, nothing else is going to be in it. So there's the lie, then there's the half-truth, and then there's a real truth. The lie is that I need to go out in space where there's nothing there but three elements, looking for some other people up there. And Holy Mother already told us there's probably no one up there. That's the lie. You see. Or I've got to go and declare war on others so I can get resources and enjoy my piggish life. That's the lie. The half-truth is that, oh, let's bring everything back home and take care of our own country only. Well, that's selfish, isn't it? But there's a practical aspect to it, that if you're doing it with a spiritual aim in mind, then you're going to be an example for the entire world. Why do you think Vivekananda jumped the ocean like him in this day and age? Hanuman jumped the ocean to rescue Sita, to bring Ram to Sita. Is that just a mythological story? Or is there some real symbology for this day and age around it? That Vivekananda jumped the ocean to bring Ram, that's Brahman, to retrieve Sita, who's here beleaguered in the state of women, in the state of the poor, in the state of the lowly. I mean, we always are singing that. Vikya vinashane sharde Rama sanatani sharde Patita pavani sharde, and so forth, on and on. See, she's the remover of obstacles, the Shakti power. She's the eternal principle of Brahman, one with Brahman like fire in its heat. And she's the savior of the fallen and the lowly, Patita pavan. So then we need to bring her, or rescue her back out of this materialistic rust that we've covered her with. We're powerful as a nation, but it's a rust-covered power. It's misdirected. It's a lie, most of it. And we're not finding that out till we get karma from it and suffer, and then it's too late to do anything about it. This is not a good condition to be in. As a country, as a politic, as a business, as a family, as an individual. It's not a good place to be. So then come out. You come out of Pasu, go to Virya. Let's see what that's about. Or did we finish Virya? One more. Are working on surrendering the self to God. So that's their saving grace, you see, is that they know that that is behind the unreal. They're beginning to see the difference between the real and the unreal. Now in Virya, and there's Hanuman jumping the ocean, or at this point, lifting a mountain to save somebody from rainfall. So he's there as the great hero, Virya, we call him Mahavir sometimes. Of course, who is he in love with? 100%. Right? Wasn't it? Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ramachandra Kripal Bhajamana Harinavabhavai. The precious Shri Ram. That's why Kailas just sang to us, tell us, O mind, why have you given up chanting and uttering the holy name of Ram? So Hanuman loved him more than anything else. That's why he didn't have any problem with his individual ego anymore. He loved the cosmic ego. I mean, if you're a monkey, how good can things be anyway? See? You want to go to the human status. So that great human being who is divine, Daiva, was Sri Ram. There he is, you see. He's amongst the divine. So you have him as your ideal, your Ishtam. You have him as your mantra. You have him as the ideal of your life. And you proceed to dip the needle of your mind into a salt solution of Ram, 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 every day, until you're just fresh all the time. See? You've got the habit of freshness. Rust can't come anywhere near. Like Vivekananda, they say, can darkness get near a sun? That was Swami Vivekananda. He cut through Maya like a hot knife through butter, as we would say. So he just shone. See, shined with all that light. So amongst the Virya, they know the difference between the real and the unreal. They work to establish justice and righteousness all around them. They protect the weak and the lowly from evil beings. That's why they're patita pavanas. And they solve problems that impede growth and progress. You see them as problem solvers in the world. Quite often the Daiva, not so concerned with the world. Like sometimes shocking people lately by saying, Holy Mother didn't care for the world. I've found her saying that. She herself said it. I don't care for the world, I care for the people, the souls in the world. I want to get them out. It's like being in a house on fire. Someone came to me just 2 days ago, a relative. House was threatened by fire, had to leave California, come here. The winds were blowing real strong. And pets were lost in the fire, and trees were burning, and it was all horrible, you see. Came here for a little refuge. I just thought it's just like a soul in the world on fire. So the world is a house on fire. When Swami told me recently, don't you know that the world's just a hole in the ground? Give it up. And they're so sure about it, certain about it. They've seen it all. What more can be seen when you see your loved ones die and suffering coming to good people? So good people suffer just as much or more than bad people, you see. So what more can be seen here, really? And you're still not ready to give it up, even though the great seers are telling you it's empty. Empty of the ability to fill you. Empty of substance even. It's just vibrating particles, and you're going to split one of those particles and make it worse by releasing a great power for destruction. Split the curtain of Maya with the atom of your intelligence and be free. See? This is the inward path. This is the inward trajectory, not the outer into outer space or into the inner of the outer, the atom or the neutron or the proton, you see, of matter. An outer object with something hidden in it. That's not inner life. That's more deception. Oh, there was something hidden in matters. That means maybe there's a great secret in matter. No. Mammon never holds any secrets, it holds deceptions. Brahman holds the secret. Shakti holds the secret. And you're that. But here's the big joke. You don't know that you're that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say the musk deer runs around in the forest looking for that beautiful scent on the wind. Drives it crazy. But it's in its own navel. It's called musk. The musk deer holds that scent in its own navel and it's looking everywhere outside for it. So that's the predicament of the soul who doesn't know that they're one with the Father and has somehow forgotten that. And these songs, much of them are about that. Give up the world. Why would you give up uttering the name of Ram and instead of giving up the world? I can't figure this out, they're saying. So I'm going to sing it to you in a song. Maybe it'll get through to you. If it's not getting through to you in the scriptures or through the words of the teacher, maybe a song will get it through to you. I can't figure this out, friend. Why have you given up God and not given up the world? So they solve problems that impede growth and progress in people. They lead souls to higher guidance or higher guides and better influences. That's a beautiful point, you see. As you'll meet one of these heroic people, let's say for instance, I was 20, Lex Hickson, our founder, was 30, generally speaking, and he showed me to a higher guide and a better influence. I was on the path already. I was studying the scriptures, practicing yoga. Even in 19 and 20 years old, I started into that. I'd become vegetarian, started to do practice. So, what did Mother send, or who did she send? You see, Lex Hickson showed up in my life in my mid-20s, and there's an inner guide and a higher influence. So this is what happens when you just make the effort towards something nobler, something deeper, something higher. You're not satisfied with the mundane things of life that everyone else is so enamored with, partying about every night. Like a big party in heaven after that. Party in heaven, party in hell, party in earth, they're all the same parties. You'll hear the same nonsense at them. See? And nobody's speaking the truth, and nobody's steering you towards God. So these viryas, they come along sometimes. Let's just say Lex Hickson was in a virya state at that time, and he wasn't in the Daiva state yet, because we saw him in the Daiva state later, for sure. But I needed a virya. I needed a heroic person to come along and say, yes, great, you're doing good. Here, now come and meet Swami Shananduji. You see, because that's what he did for me. I was practicing yoga alone for years, and he took me to Swami Shananduji, ironically, who lived in the same city I grew up in. And I didn't know about him all those first 18 years of my life. So at least I had the location close. I was in the same loka as Ramakrishna, and I just had to find a virya to connect me to that. A couple more steps, just jump the river, see, jump the Columbia River, he's there. So that's a beautiful point. Lead souls to higher guides and better influences. These people will put you on the right track, deeper track. Even if you're already on a good track, they'll put you on a deeper track. Finally, act as true friends and companions for humanity. That's Dinabandhu, a true friend, eternal friend, or the eternal companion, we like to say. Now, in the time remaining, and I think we have it, let's look at finishing this chart, because all of this is a precursor to the rust over consciousness. We have to say that there are different kinds of rust and different kinds of levels of our being. Our individual lives, our political lives, our business lives, our family lives, especially our family lives. Be good to point at that. But we're also saying that there are, in all of these groups, families, businesses, nations, and so forth, there are people who are pasu, there are people who are virya, and there are people who are daiva. Like Siksan for us, came out of daiva. Swami Shananduji out of daiva. So they're coexisting with all of these other kinds of beings, even the three lower designations, moral and ethical, restless, and evil, all coexisting on this one planet. See? So with all of that as a sort of presentation, to get to this idea about how we're going to get rid of some of this rust that will allow us to graduate, our consciousness to graduate back to its pure natural state. We always have to say that as Advaita Vedantists, is that our consciousness is pure and stainless to begin with. In fact, it has no beginning. It's just always pure and perfect. And we just fall away from it when we take bodies, minds, senses, prana, rebirth. So how to get back to that original state? So there amongst the Daiva, you see, now, just since we didn't take it, probably should have read it at the beginning. Tantra lists 3 classes of devotees. Daiva, who are refined and realized. Virya, who are well-intentioned and heroic. And Pasu, who are energetic and well-intentioned, but still desirous of enjoying pleasures. So that's kind of a recap of that. And in that light, let's look at these points under divine beings. They see beyond what is real and unreal. So it's not a consideration for them anymore. They're past the discrimination or viveka phase, and they're living in a state of all is Brahman. Might be one way to kind of understand in advance, sort of a precognitive understanding of how they live, even though as yet maybe we can't quite feel it ourselves all the time. Maybe we even get glimpses of it and rise like that, but then we fall. Say, what happened again? Why did we leave that non-dual state? How did Maya cover my eyes as she does so deftly? So they're beyond that discrimination phase, and they're living in this state of I am Brahman, or I and my Father are one. That thou art. They meditate blissfully on divine reality. One of their secrets to keeping the rust away, the corrosion, is that Raja Yoga. Not in its practice, because they've learned yamas, niyamas, posture, breathing, how to separate their minds from objects, how to concentrate, how to meditate. Finally they had samadhi. And now they can run a boat race between these 3 chakras. That's how Sri Ramakrishna said. I run a boat race between these chakras. Never falls anymore. So he says, if I want to talk to the devotees, I come to the heart. That's the drawing room of the rich man, he said. That's where they gather. The devotees gather in that room. It's where the rich man smokes his pipe and has his comfortable moments, you see. So sometimes I come there and talk to the devotees. Other times I speak the Dharma amongst the devotees, those who want to hear me. So then I go here and I have a vision, you see. Then I disappear. So I'm running a boat race all the time. Beautiful way in which he described it. So meditating blissfully on divine reality is both their secret and their attainment. Raja Yoga has been realized. So that's why good we took Swami Shananduji's quote there about realizing Raja Yoga and Shakti. They serve Brahman in all beings. That's really only thing left over to them, because they've realized Brahman and they still have a body. There's still a little prarabdha karma there, karma from this birth. That is, having a body is a kind of karma. But yet they've purified their body and senses, and so now that just a little time left over for them to be here, they'll turn and serve others. Serve Brahman and others would be a better way of saying that. So if they come to serve you and you take it from ego, then you've got it wrong. See, oh, they must like me. No, it's not that. They don't like you. They don't hate you either. They want to see Brahman in you shine. See? Because that's beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, heaven, earth, and hell, and all other sets of opposites. So they're not catering to one or the other, because if they cater to good, the bad's going to come up, and vice versa. That's just natural in the gunas. It's natural in creation, preservation, and destruction. It's natural in projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. It's natural in time, space, and causality. It's naturally in Bhurabhuvasvaha. And it's natural in AUM. It's natural in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Isn't it also natural in Shukti, Yukti, and Anubhava? Hear the truth and you're going to have negative things come in your mind. Or is that true or not? That might be a lie, you see. Or I don't like that truth. Sort of like the person saying, "Oh God, please come to me and transform me completely, but only if there's no pain involved." See? Only come if there's no pain involved. Transform me, but I'm not willing to undergo the transformation if it's going to make me suffer. But of course it's going to make you suffer. Otherwise you wouldn't need transformation. It wouldn't have even occurred in your mind. You'd already be in a blissful state like they are, meditating on it all the time. So service of Brahman and other beings is there. And they also inspire souls to attain samadhi. One of the things of Sri Ramakrishna, we said that yesterday at the little class on Mother Kali I gave before our puja here. I said, really, Sri Ramakrishna, you could list 3 or 4 main things he came for. One was, of course, bring the Divine Mother to us. Really, for the first time ever in this Mahayuga, I think. First time ever Mother has been brought out. Think about it. And think about Sri Sharda Devi, a simple village woman, being the head of one of the largest religious organizations in the world. If she's such a simple village woman, then how did she get to this position? Can you name any other woman in the world that reached such a high position, especially in spiritual life? So when you think about these things, you think this great truth has come amongst us in the form of SRV, Sharda, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda. One of them being like Hanuman, the other being like Sita, and the other being like Rama. So, or Krishna, Radha, and Balaram, if you will. So, when you say Sri Ramakrishna came, then there were several other reasons for that. The other one is to, of course, show you what samadhi's like, because we hadn't seen that either. There weren't a lot of people around to describe Shankara's samadhi, or we had people describing Chaitanya's bhavas, he danced and sang. But those are Sananda samadhis. What about Nirvikalpa samadhi and these higher Sampragata samadhi or nirvana? We heard about Buddha's nirvana. We know Christ went into stunned samadhi under the tree in the forest. Not a lot of people describe that because no one was there. Sri Ramakrishna was in samadhi most of the time with everyone around him in Bengal. Not only people that came out of curiosity to see his samadhis and went away wondering what's that like, but some very profoundly realized souls, old and young, who had come with him into this world to accompany him. They're called Ishvarakotis, or Vibhutis, or Nityasiddhas. These are designations and names for people who are realized souls in their own right, who if they feel a movement in consciousness, which usually doesn't move, they're on the spot. You know what I mean? Consciousness is immovable, still, static. If an avatar decides to form itself out of that, say that water of consciousness, and there's a big vibration, then the souls around there will form around him and come with him and her. So they're Ishvarakotis, they're called. They're following the Avataravada, the path of those who incarnate with the avatar whenever he decides to vibrate, come out of formlessness. Even such souls as Vivekananda, who would never come back again, sitting for 700 years in samadhi, Holy Mother said, all of a sudden Ramakrishna vibrates, come back with me. There are songs written about it. I'm going down there. The ark of the world is sinking in lust and greed, the song says. So there are Johnny on the spot ready for this. You see, they want to see the Boer Loka get a good spanking. See, it needs a good spanking. Wake up, you see. And who else can do it but an avatar? Even an avatar can only do it for some thousands of people. The rest will stay sleepy. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say that even God can't help them. Imagine. Even God can't help them. That's a lot of rust. See? It's a lot of corrosion over the stainless steel of your consciousness. Well, I'm going on and on about that because samadhi was one of the things that Sri Ramakrishna brought to us. unlike anyone else, and it was in our age, relatively speaking, 1800s, and it was written down and noted by many astute beings, even Brahmin priests who knew about the scriptures, what kind of samadhis there were. Sri Ramakrishna was teaching them samadhis that they didn't have listed in the scriptures. Surprise, there's another samadhi for you. Oh, I better go write that down. So that's one of the great things in which he does. He brought the mother and he brought samadhi to us. And he was also a paragon of universal harmony. All religions are true. So those three things, when you say Sri Ramakrishna and you want to describe universality in its true form, you can probably cite those three things as pillars upon which that not mandir rests. They exemplify spirituality for all aspirants. You don't need a savior as much as you need an exemplar. For 2,000 years, people have been waiting on the savior. And that's just in one religion. It's happened in other religions too. So you need exemplars. And if you find one, even like I found the spiritual guide and then a guru, then you should receive that with all gratitude. That's not given very easily. So you take to it and you practice and merit that and warrant it. They maintain peace and balance in the lokas. Now, if you want to know why this earth still exists in some sort of beauty, there's still air to breathe, there's still water to drink, there's still distance between you and the violent, warlike mongers, then it's probably because these souls are keeping certain boundaries for you, keeping you safe, protected by their very presence. You just need to think about them. And in fact, that's very important for you to think about them, because if you think about them inside of you, you'll bring them out. And then you will be virya and beyond. You'll be protecting all beings. This is part of what they realize. I'm a great channel for Ram, Hanuman thinks. I need to do his bidding. I can help so many souls. I don't care if it's real or unreal. I'm just going to help souls. That's the great Bhakta's attitude. Finally, they protect and sustain the Dharma on earth. Enough said, because that's what we've been talking about, and that's how to do away with the rust of human consciousness. Get this Dharma realized. I said Dharma, not drama. So give up the drama, that is the sensationalism, the continuing rounds of phenomena outside, in space, outer space, and here, and invest yourself with those teachings, with that elixir, salt elixir, that does away with the rust over the mind and its consciousness. So here, we need to break, and we will take some sacred prasad from last night's puja. We hope you do the same at home, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes for more teachings on this. Aloha. We are ready now for Class 1, Part B, because this is the way they come to you on the YouTubes once these classes are turned into, rendered by Mahesh, one of our wonderful workers in SRV, that takes these classes and these series and puts them on YouTube. Some of you are familiar with that. There must be a good 40, 50, 60, maybe more classes, and the whole class, because of our break, which we just had now, is Part A, Part B, so they seem like they're different classes, but they're just extensions in a series. So if you want to know about food, prana, and sadhana, which by the way is the one that I'm preparing right now, editing out certain things that are wasteful time and so forth, condensing it, then that's going to be appearing on YouTube before too long. That was a great series we did last year, or maybe even the year before, 2 years ago. Food, prana, and and sadhana. And it's kind of good to jump forward 2 years to a kind of sadhana type of class. There's calling this rust of consciousness idea, because sadhana, we're saying, is that self-effort that will get rid of that for all time. And you need the power of being and the power of doing, in that sense, both. You need to actually be up and doing your practice and then see its result over time and master those tendencies and then live in a peace and balance. Be content and happy, as Shankara says, and after you render the dual reality into one reality, seemingly two into one eternal. So these classes then will be separated into two on the YouTube, but for now you're here on hand, I hope, and namaste and welcome to those who are watching from Iceland, from Hungary, from Portland, Oregon, from San Francisco, from the East Coast of New England, from India, and probably even here in Hawaii, those who couldn't be on hand today. Various places in the world where they're being tuned into the Dharma as experienced and presented by SRV teachers and practitioners, all very sincerely and seriously, with a little bit of humor thrown in occasionally. Keep it light, as they say, but these teachings are very serious because they will do away with suffering. We feel like, and I and our founder Lex Hickson concurred on this matter when he was still in the body, his last birth, is that there's nothing that will get rid of suffering and ignorance like the Dharma. It is the cat's meow, if you want to put it that way, of spiritual life. Dharma would be the four yogas and their practice, basically, if you want to really summate them or concentrate them. And in that case, then we present it, like I say, not just harp on it, but emphasize it, and so that people can know without any doubt whatsoever that this is what they need to be doing. Because people who are dragging their feet and who are averse or who are lazy or not making the grade, there's that saying that Lex Hickson, our founder, used to say, is that everybody knows that the young boy who doesn't do his studies and homework gets whipped soundly and put to bed without dinner. See, that's a saying in our tradition. So in those strict families, you need to do that study. It's a part of everyday life. It'll get rid of the rust. Sometimes it's the rust over moral being, and sometimes it's the rust over just practical matters, and sometimes, more importantly and more detrimentally, it's a rust over our spiritual life, our religious and spiritual life, and philosophical life too, because that's very important in India. Many of us aren't interested in philosophy in the West because it's a subject. It's a subject in school that you make money from and so forth. And you do it as you would do any way of life or walk of life. But philosophy in India is truth. And it must be stated and it must be realized by the teacher and then given to the student through a transmission, a direct transmission. Guru Parampara it's called. So philosophy is never sundered from religion. It's not like two different subjects. I mean, I think religion is not so much just a subject in school as philosophy is. So that's unfortunate about philosophy here. But of course religion can become a vocation. But what we want is people who go beyond their vocations and pull these things all into the middle and integrate them into consciousness, bring awareness to them. And so it's like Vivekananda saying, work, work, work. It's drudgery. First it's got a practical application because you're doing duty, but then later on it turns into drudgery, and so there's no other purpose for it. Ultimately, work, that is, than to bring knowledge. So if you have work, turns to knowledge. And when you have knowledge, you don't need to work so much anymore. And knowledge will then lead you to wisdom. And wisdom will lead you to enlightenment. So these are all very important points, and the rust that falls over all levels of this path are what we want to do away with day-to-day sadhana, spiritual practice, self-effort. So that takes us, with a short preamble, into this bucket of rusty nails I want to talk about. And the story here, I told it to the students present here today, and they'll hear it again, is that one of my students, being a construction worker on a site, got rained out in rainy old Portland, Oregon. Rained for weeks, evidently, and they left the construction site. Somebody forgot to cover the bucket of nails. And over time, because the money was withdrawn, as what happens in Maya, oh, we have this project we're doing and we're going to get paid. Oh, no, actually, we're not going to pay you now because of the delay. All the Mayan things had happened. Nobody visited the site for a long time. So this bucket filled with water, and when they finally did come back to the site months later, it was already beginning to rust, and some of the nails were beginning to fuse into clumps even. So you could like take out a clump of nails and you have to use a hammer to break them apart. Well, here's a picture I found about that, of a bucket of rusty nails. And the idea here is, for me, was when I saw it, was, oh great, that's perfect for my next class series, you see, which is, what are we titling it exactly?
Destroying the rust of spiritual
Destroying the rust of spiritual life. Thank you. I recall the exact name. So, to destroy the rest of spiritual life, sadhana, spiritual practice, that's all, simple. Now just find a teacher, engage in the practice, do it. In that way, doing will be very good for you, rather than the doing of just worldly life and earthly existence. But the doing of spiritual life, sadhana, probably don't have any word in English like that, like it's in Sanskrit. Sadhana means specifically do your spiritual practices day to day. And we must say about that, it's not just prayer or one time a day at meals or praying at night before you go to bed. Oh, please, Lord, may I be a good boy, and so forth. And save my mother and father, as if that's going to happen. Death's not going to come to everyone. So it's not just prayer about impractical things. See, it's meditation on the reality. Prayer has certain advantages, has certain disadvantages. Meditation has certain advantages, and if you look into it deep enough, could also have disadvantages. But the real important thing, difference between the two, and we have a chart on it, of course, is that meditation is on divine reality, not on hopes, fears, and phenomena. Oh, please save the people of this country or that country. Good luck with that. All people are going to suffer here, because the first noble truth is suffering is. The first noble truth is suffering is, and nobody escapes that. So to escape the worst effects of it, though, you can protect yourself with spiritual efforts. And so again, back to the bucket of rusty nails, I thought, well, what a perfect example and teaching for what's called in Sanskrit, another word we don't have really much of in English, is samskara. Samskara is a collection of impressions in the mind that gathered from past lifetimes. Also, your early life has samskaras in it. Growing up, you had certain impressions that began, might say those are the new nails added into the bucket. But when you came here, your mind bucket had all of these rusty nails in it already from previous existences. Most people don't think that way or know about that. Actually, it's Buddha's saying, right? Well, we can use another saying that he said about buckets. You know what that is? Drops of Dharma into your bucket. He said, get yourself a bucket and collect raindrops of Dharma. That would be, oh, that meditation I did last week, and this act of service I did to this person, and that puja I did last night, and that study of scripture I did last week. Those are drops. Now, if you were to do that every day, it would be a deluge. See, your bucket would be full quick. But most people are just doing one of these things of the 4 yogas occasionally. So they're running around with this bucket in a very thin, spaced out rain. And pretty soon there's a little inch of water down there. Well, Buddha said that's gathering merit, punya. And it'll help do away with demerit, papa. punya and papa. I have a song about it. So you want to gather these drops of Dharma in the bucket of your mind. So now here's him saying this, and I'll quote it directly, whereas I paraphrased it in the first half. Negligence is the rust of the watchman, leading to calamity. Sloth is the rust of all beautiful and good things. Non-recitation of the wisdom scriptures is the rust of monasteries, and lack of spiritual self-effort is the rust of households. Lord Buddha, Dhammapada, Canto 18, Sloka 241. So here we have Lord Buddha speaking in a different way about rust, and this is a very good image to portray this. So what I did was I took it and I put the 4 yogas on all sides of it, since those are our practices. Remember what Swami Vivekananda said, I never tire of repeating it, that the 4 yogas are the new religion of this age. That is, we can do away with tired old forms of Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, and so forth, and we can take on this new religion, which is all based in practice. See? Here's your opportunity to actually do practice, not just be a religionist or a moral person or pray a lot to some entity that might not even exist yet for you. Which God are you praying to? God of nature? The formless God? There's no form in divine reality. Forms come out of it, but it's not made of form itself. So you have to philosophically again question these things and come to a siddhanta, a conclusion about them. So when you do that, wouldn't it be best to actually do a practice around each of these yogas? So I've put all 4 of these around this bucket of rusty nails, and from the tip of each of those rusty nails there, I've directed that to points underneath those yogas. Well, let's see here. Like nails left out in the rain in a bucket on a deserted construction site, gradually fusing with one another into lumps of rusty iron, similarly, the neglected and untrained mind forms complexes of residual karma, called samskaras, that impede spiritual progress and dictate the unhealthy conditions of future births in ignorance. So it's not enough just to sit here with some rusty nails and then maybe a few good nails in your mind and just let the rusty ones be. It's like, what, rotten apple in a barrel of good apples? Even one tends to spoil the whole thing. So the astute and specific spiritual practitioner is going to go in there and examine those samskaras of the mind in meditation, in sleep, at the time of death, if no sooner, that what is my mind made of? What are those impressions? Mental impressions would be a good English way of defining the word samskara. Maybe even better, complexes, because in Western psychology, Freud and Jung, we have this idea of mental complexes. Unfortunately, where Western psychology is concerned, they don't hook these complexes up to previous lifetimes. They may consider that it's possible, but some of them, maybe the more advanced and rational ones, radical ones rather, but to actually show how they connect up to your past lifetimes, that has to be left to the Dharma, to beings like Sri Krishna in the Gita, Sri Rama in the Adhyatma Ramayana, and so forth. So, with this said, the lack of spiritual self-effort is the rust of households, is the subtitle, and the corrosion of human consciousness is the title of this, to go with our class series. This will be sort of the cover-all chart. And I've prefaced it all by reminding everyone that on the unillumined level and on the illumined level, there are 3 classes of beings that apply across the board. Those who are still weaker, unable to realize the truth, those who are heroic, and those who are actually in full realization of the truth. The enlightened, the heroic, and the animalistic, although that sounds a little judgmental and harsh. The animalistic just means that there are still some passions there that haven't been purified yet. So then let's get to examining this chart in our remaining time. You see there on the far left corner, upper Raja Yoga, that's the eight-limbed yoga of Patanjali. It ends with meditation and samadhi. It starts with yamas and niyamas. I could have pulled out the tree of yoga and showed you. We've done that many times. Look back on our YouTube classes to see a view of that. So under Raja Yoga, I immediately would put failure to meditate daily. That would be one of the rusty nails, you see, that's getting in the way of the process. Failure to meditate daily. And of course, each one of these points brings up a whole host of teachings, like you better get a guru, you better find out that meditation has two types, one with form and one without form, and which one's suited to you the best, or maybe how you can even harmonize the two, like we do in Ramakrishna order. First we meditate on the Ishtam in our heart, then we, with the mala and the mantra, then we put that down and meditate on formless Brahman. So we have both form and formlessness in our sadhana. This is very good. You might not even realize it as you're doing it for years. But when you think back on it later, you say, I'm sure glad I had both of those. See, it's like saying later, saying, well, I'm sure glad I had both my legs. And you took them for granted all this time, you see. Or you come across a pirate with one leg or something. Well, I'm sure glad I had both my legs all my life. See, matey. And of course the parrot is sitting there on the shoulder. You know what he says. So, failure to meditate daily, then very important with those qualifications. Make sure that you've been informed about the eight-limb yoga leading up to the seventh limb, which is called Dhyan yoga. That is the yoga of meditation. What are the requisites to that, and so forth. Failure to teach your children how to meditate comes right up into the picture, because here we are in a world where lack of spiritual self-effort is the rest of households. So we notice this maybe. Maybe parents in this day and time have even brooded and worried about that. It's one of the thoughts that haunts their minds. Oh, I'm really not teaching them anything of real substance. Just sending them to school. Part of that is to get rid of them, so I don't have to deal with them all day, you see. And another, when they come home, I'm not spending quality time with them like my wife told me to do, so I feel guilty about that, you see. So there's all these things floating around in their mind, not getting around to the point. What is the point? Teach your children to sit with you and listen. That's a kind of meditation. Teach them to concentrate. That's the sixth limb of yoga. Then teach them to meditate. That's the seventh limb of yoga. Then explain to them how Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi so often in this day and age in front of us. That's the eighth limb of yoga. Do this with them. Half hour, an hour. Is that so hard? Go mow the lawn. Well, actually, I'll mow the lawn. Here, come and sit with me. You see, do the dishes. Oh, I'll do the dishes later. Come sit with me. Let's teach you the wisdom of the ages. We've heard about it. It's in our traditions. Why aren't we sharing that with them? Is the world so important that ends in death and decay and destruction and disease in the end, or maybe even before the end, along the way, that we can't sit and teach them the eternal truth while we have the chance to do so? So here is one very important point that follows on the other. Meditate every day, then teach your children how to do it. Teach them the Raja Yoga system. Oh, they're too young. They don't understand. They probably understand more than you do. They'll probably surprise you as you start teaching them to how much they know and how much they remind you of what you don't know. Or maybe remind you of something you do know that you've forgotten. Out of the mouth of babes, isn't it? Was that Shakespeare or something? So here you are with these two very important points. Raja Yoga right there next to it on the right-hand side, neglect of recitation and memorization of scriptures. See, so that's one of those rusty nails. Yes, it is said about that in the monasteries, but we found out that at households it's also very important, because we each have our own household, and each of us, whether we have children or not, under my encouragement and the encouragement of our founder and encouragement of my guru, Swami Shananduji, have all encouraged you all to read the scriptures, recite them, memorize them. In yoga, what's that called? Svadhyaya. And where is it found in the 8 limbs?
5 or 6. Oh.
In the 2nd limb, called niyamas. It's one of the practices you're supposed to do. Ahimsa, nonviolence, and truthfulness, that's an observance. See, practices are meditate on Ishvara, right? And do austerity and recite the scriptures. Memorize them. Be able to recite them. Not just audibly, but right now I can run 50, 100 slokas from my mind. By memory, I don't have to go to a book. And the beautiful thing about that is not just to show how good my memory is, although it does keep it sharp, but it's that I can just enjoy that. I don't have to move. My hands don't have to move to the shelf. My lips don't have to move. My mind can savor it, see. So these are the benefits of that. Say you have some horrible, debilitating experience, or death is coming to your door, and you have a habit of relying on the scriptures for your peace of mind. Oh, well then aren't you just going to default back to that? The soul is birthless and deathless. My doctor's telling me I'm going to die. The soul's birthless and deathless. So sadhana does away with the rust of the idea of death. It's the kind of rust that comes upon you automatically, and it's the kind of corrosion that's in the back of everyone's mind, isn't it? I will die someday. Because they ask Shankara, what's the most amazing thing you ever saw? He said that although death is all around, man never thinks that he's going to die. Ask Holy Mother the same question 1400 years later. What's the most amazing thing you've ever seen, Mataji? That although people suffer so much from their mistakes, they'll never correct them. They'll keep erring again and again, even though their lessons are coming back to them. They won't learn their lessons from their mistakes and just modify. That's going to be sadhana that does that, not just, oh, maybe I'll do better next time. That's morality. That's like chance. Oh, maybe I will, maybe I won't, you see. But if you get down and say, I'm not doing that again, and this is how I'm going to stop it, that's a rust-removing device in you. Corrosion doesn't have a chance to build up. It's not like this condition. If your mind is like this, rusty lumps of samskaras in your mind from things you've done past lifetimes that are still haunting you. What kind of a way is that to live? Or to be born? So Shankara says, mentioning Shankara, an amazing thing he saw, he says, practice your breathing exercises, control the senses, study the Dharma under a competent preceptor, and meditate upon divine reality daily. In a mind that does all this, how can there be any lack of inner peace and abiding happiness? So in one statement here, 2 sentences, he's giving you the exercises to do, and he's also telling you, reasoning with you, practically saying, how can you fail to have abiding happiness? And he used to sing this. He would sing it like this. Pranayamam pratyahadam nicha viveka vicharam japya sameda samadhi vidanam kurva vadanam mahadavadaram bhaja govindam bhaja govindam nudamate samprapte sannihite kari nahi nahi rakshati dukare karane bhaja govindam. His beautiful song. See, so he says there everything you need to hear about the practice, and then he reasons with your mind. You'll have abiding happiness and peace and harmony if you do this. Try it. Try it. You'll like it. Now, Raja Yoga had those 3 points. Let's go to the Jnana Yoga side, upper right hand of this chart. Carelessness in implementing spiritual discrimination. So, viveka, that's a part of the Jnana Yoga path almost more than any other thing. That's why Swamiji named himself after it before he came west in 1893, when he was still swimming out to the island there, and Kanyakumari down there at the tip of India, and getting that message from Mother, you must go swim the ocean. You must jump the ocean again, like Hanuman did in an earlier time. So that was the age of Ram. He's in the age of Ram Krishna. Same being, same beings, but nonetheless, he has to do it for the West in this case. Whereas it was just in Indian Ceylon that it took place earlier. So here we have the recipients of this great gift, you see, viveka, to discriminate between the real and the unreal, because as animalistic beings, they're still not clear on that. And we become clear about it, we become heroic, and then finally we go beyond the idea of dualities, real or unreal, life or death, form or formlessness. There's some very subtle dualities to rise above, not just happiness and sorrow and good and bad. Those are basic. Those should be obvious to get over. So implement spiritual discrimination. Otherwise, that's one of those rusty nails that's hiding in that clump down there. And look at how it's beginning to fuse with another one, forgetting to spread the precious Dharma in the world. So you have a responsibility to refresh yourself as to what the Dharma is, and then spread it, just like you have a responsibility to meditate and teach it to your children, right? So the yogas fuse and integrate in this way, and you have to keep your eye on all four of them. Your eye on the prize, as they say, eyes on the prize, until the eyes are no longer dual. They're that one jnana chakshu, that single eye. If you shall have a single eye and know the truth. So don't forget to spread this precious Dharma once you learn it well from an illumined preceptor. And acharya, a nice word in India. We don't really have much of an equivalent here either. An acharya, not a priest who is conducting rituals and telling you to pray or those kinds of things at the moral level. An acharya whom you can go to and learn these secrets of the Dharma from that have been buried for thousands of years. Even in India you can't find them much anymore. Great souls have to come and tear off this cloak, Maya, for you, so that you know that these are the truth. This is not opinion anymore, and this is not a matter of vying religions. It's a matter of the truth that underlies them all. And it's obvious to you once you start practicing them, not until. You can hear it and get inspired, but until you put it into practice, you're not gaining the effect of it, which is what's happening out here in the last 50 years in the West. Even the last 150 years from Vivekananda's coming. What else is there? Ignoring the need to contemplate the wisdom of the seers. So you need to recite and memorize the scriptures, then you need to contemplate them, right? As I was just saying, you can sit and just roll them over and over your mind. Forget wine tasting. Your tongue is just a piece of flesh that will deteriorate later, and wine's not that good for you anyway, no matter what they say. You're a wine-soaked culture, alcohol-steeped culture, that's never going to do you any good. Partying, soused, with over the limit, driving, killing people, and burning out your liver, and other things that they don't mention on the labels of alcohol bottles. What to speak of the kind of behavior people fall into when they are inebriated with alcohol. In Buddhist commandments, they even mention it. They specifically say no alcohol. Jainism too, no alcohol, because it's been such a problem for so long. What is that? Why is that problem there? Because of some scars. You're born with a taste for alcohol, you live fusing that taste with alcohol, you die still addicted to alcohol. What do you think's going to happen in your next lifetime? That you're somehow going to be magically free of it? That it's not going to pass on genetically even to your children? what to speak of the karma that caused the genetics? That caused the actual makeup, the physical makeup, came from a mind that's a bucket of rusty nails. So you need to get in there and purify. Purification is, again, one of the yamas and yamas of yoga. It starts the whole thing out. Saucha, it's called. That's a part of your sadhana. When things get purified, then you become clear. That's called Shakti, clarification. And when you get clear, then you can begin to exercise your spiritual powers, like Kaivalya. Separate yourself from nature. This is the path that they've all taken who've gained enlightenment. Why are we dragging our feet along this path? Why aren't we snapping to immediately? Immediately would mean this lifetime. But 6 months if you can, Vivekananda said. If you do it right, concentrate right, have the right teacher, and apply yourself, 6 months should be able to get you free. That's going to be, of course, according to how many nails you have that are rusty. And I'm not talking about these. You can sit and polish these all you want. Pay exorbitant amounts of money with your fingernails and your toenails and painting them and doing various things. We're talking about some different kinds of nails here that are, when they pierce you, they cause the disease of lockjaw, isn't it? With iron, you get rust in your system. Tetanus. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a kind of life-to-lifetime tetanus you're born with. And no inoculation or shot's going to get over that except a shot of Vedanta, a shot of Dharma, the transmission of Dharma from your teacher to you, mind to mind, until you can have your own hammer, take handfuls of these, put them on the ground, break them, dip them in salt water, and put them back in the bucket. Or not. If you want to live a really beautiful, pure life, put them back in the bucket. If you're done with life, throw them in the ocean. The ocean is all salt water. Never come back again in ignorance. So enough said about the Jnana Yoga side, although I personally believe that there's never enough said about it. That yoga is prime for us in the West right now. Needs to be activated. So now let's go down to the lower left then, Bhakti Yoga. What are some of the nails there? Allowing worldly talk to replace talk of God. That would probably be Sri Ramakrishna's first choice. So I was thinking of it. These are all my own choices. There are many others. It's only an 8x11, not a lot of room. So I chose the ones that I thought would be most pertinent and applicable to us as Westerners in this day and age. So anytime you're talking worldly, shut up. You're dumb, shut up. And just stop the tongue. Silence is the first order of yoga. Oh, I'm sorry, Lord, I spoke about worldly things. I should be speaking the Dharma to everyone. So I must fuse Jnana Yoga with Bhakti Yoga. Two wings of the bird. Two wings of the bird, my teacher always said. Bhakti and Jnana. Bird can't get off the ground without both of them. Oh, he had both, and in spades, as they say. He was a Jivanmukta, realized soul, last living devotee of Holy Mother on earth. So you know this was left behind. He was left behind for a great purpose. And there he was with just a following of some 30, 40, 50 people, not millions that are flocking to these charlatans, but just a group of very intensely guided individuals. And then knowledge of who he was around spiritual circles around the world. Pretty soon Swami Shananduji was known by everyone as being the last, that is, everyone who loved God. Amongst the heroic and the Daiva, as being the last living devotee of Sri Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother on earth. So his pujas and his talks used to swell toward the end of his life. People were coming, even out of curiosity, to see him. So don't allow worldly talk to replace talk of God. Talk of God is beautiful. It's not like some proselytization that you're doing door to door. Don't get us wrong. We're not going to force it on you. We're not going to bore you with it if you're not interested. But if you can develop a taste for it, you'll find yourself humming all day the tune of Dharma. Your mind will naturally hum it. You won't have commercials and stupid songs from the top 40 or something in your mind anymore. You'll be humming these tunes, like we just sang. Pranayamam pratyaharam nitya nitya viveka vicharam. That I can regulate the breath, withdraw the senses from their objects, discriminate well between the real and the unreal, control the mind and senses with the recitation of the mantra, perform these well with great care, he says. So there's different versions of that in different translations. What else can you do there in Bhakti Yoga about these rusty nails? Becoming complacent about reading out the Bhakti Sutras to family and children. Sandilya's Bhakti Sutras, Narada's Bhakti Sutras, the great Itihasa teachings from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, these are infused with wisdom. This isn't Aesop's fairy tales or Grimm's fairy tales about silly things, cows jumping over the moon and the dish running off the spoon. This is about getting rid of rusty nails through love of God, a love of God that you've neglected now to be involved in, and that you're neglecting in your children. And it's not a God that's a fundamentalist God or a dualistic God only. It's the existence of pure consciousness in both of you, you and your son, you and your wife and daughter. It's the one consciousness that's there that everyone needs to hear about. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. That God. You can see it with form for a while. As we say, meditate on Ishtam or Ishvara. Then you must also put Ishvara aside and get to the Father through the Son. How come nobody in Christianity is doing that? How come we're not hearing anyone who got to the Father through the Son? Enlightened souls, where are they in our country or in that tradition? Basically almost any tradition now. A lot of people are having experiences of a God with form, or some people are even saying all this is Brahman and thinking that the form is God in their ignorance. God can never be a form, but it borrows forms, it emanates through forms, it expresses itself through forms, but that's God with form we're talking about, not the formless Brahman, not Allah or Yahweh or divine Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbo. That's formless. That's the light. Light doesn't have form, it just infuses everything. Then we're going to grab that light there, you see. Well, this light around me is Brahman, and that lamp is Ishvara. And that candle over there is a seer. And that firefly out there is you. It's just different forms of light. But the light itself doesn't have a form. That's why they call it all-pervasive. Infuses everything, Sri Ramakrishna said, like sweetness in sugarcane juice. Can I get that sweetness out of there somehow? See? To go through a big process to do that. Crystallize it somehow. So my point here then, don't become complacent about reading out these Bhakti Sutras. If you're a Christian and you have a Bible, find a good way of interpreting that doesn't necessarily adhere to King James, because King James was not a seer, was not an illumined soul. You can find better versions of Jesus' teachings now that stay to the truth. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, man has no place to lay his head here. That's the teaching on renunciation. How are you going to misinterpret that? That we should build our houses on sand instead of on the bedrock? He's saying very explicitly there, so these are the teachings, the Beatitudes and so forth, that you concentrate on and tell to your children, and you try and do it without hypocrisy. Oh, there are people around the world who have other religions who also say this. They also believe this. They realize this. And we need to share this wisdom with each other. This is a part of the universal Dharma. Sanatana Dharma. This is how Sanatana Dharma in India stayed pure and focused and powerful for so long. And never went away even when Hinduism fell and rose. Even when Buddhism came and fell. Even when Vedanta came and fell. That's not the Dharma stayed constant underneath it. And we always could find our way back to the truth through it. Just like we're doing right now in this room. So read out the Bhakti Sutras. Also the Jnana scriptures. See, memorize them. This is my own bucket of rusty nails for you. See, I mean, I could have chosen a lot of things. And each one of these I could take apart and talk for hours on. If you want me to make connections for you, but these things are things in each yoga that you can apply a salt solution to in your practice every day till they go away. And I woke up one day and my ignorance was gone, utterly gone. Ask the cow about that, utterly gone. Another one here, failure to make use of the spiritual teacher, holy company, and recitation of the mantra in everyday life. Om tari tu tari turi swaha, om tari tu tari turi mama, ayu punyigyana puktin kura swaha. See? So it's a triple gem. It's pretty much Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or Guru, Dharma, Sangha in our tradition. So you want to take full recourse to those. Use all three of them to the fullest extent in your life. Even when you're realized, you don't burn a bridge to your Guru. Even if you think you're realized and go away, you should maintain that connection. People calling me quite often, oh, I'm having such a hard time. I say, well, I thought you were already illumined. You left me a long time ago. I thought you told me you were illumined, you didn't need me anymore. Okay, I'll help you. What's the problem? See? So people fall upon hard times. Their karma. Where's their karma come from? From a bucket of rusty nails in their head called samskaras. And how do the samskaras get made? By my own karmic actions. Chicken and the egg. Choose which one you want. You see. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because the fox was on his side. So you want to get away from that. You see. So you make a big crossing. You jump the ocean if you need to get to the truth. You move mountains, as Muhammad said, to get to the truth. Kali's wisdom thunder rumbles profoundly with a power that can topple mountains. Beautiful songs of Ram Prasad. That wisdom thunder will disintegrate mountains. But you need to get that lightning flash from her smile of bliss, from her teeth, you see. And those things will do the trick. You see. Subject your sadhana to scrutiny by the Guru, who is Shakti's own emissary. See? And then see if darkness can exist in you any longer. Or how long can it? Are you doing your part? So this is what we mean, you see. Holy company is your sangha, teacher is your guru, mantra is your practice. You can have other practices too, but mantra will be very effective if you use it. If you understand the word Om, understand the word Namaha, understand the word Shivaya, or Mani Padme Hum, or whatever mantra you've been given in whatever tradition. If you understand those, contemplate them, and start using them, how quickly will that deity come running to you in your life and shore you up and accompany you all the way to your death and beyond. Understand that you're a birthless, deathless being. Oh, did you fall into some doubt about that? Here, I'll prove it to you. Die. Oh, you're reborn again? Here, I'll prove it to you again. Die. Oh, you came back again. Here, I'll prove it to you. Die again. You've been witness of all your births and deaths. You're still here, aren't you? Is there ever a time when consciousness can be extinguished? Can you put it out like a candle with your fingers? Psst. One of those magic candles. You see, flame comes jumping back. That's you. what else here then? We can say, because Guru, Dharma, Sangha, the triple gem, very important. Under Karma Yoga now, allowing money instead of service to become the main aim of earthly life is how I put it. Because we were saying yesterday, and we've been saying it for a while, that yama of yoga called a parigraha, according to Patanjali, gift giving they call it, or gift receiving, you should do away with that. Why? Well, there are different explanations of that, but the one Patanjali himself gives, or that Vedavyas commented on, father of Vedanta commenting on the father of yoga's system, that Vedavyas said, because you're engaging in commerce the minute you're born, they're gearing you for success. And that success is based in money and profit, and if you don't have it, you're not a success. So, if you want to work dharmically, fine. Isn't that one of the four fruits we just said? First dharma, then satisfaction of desires, then artha, wealth. So desires and wealth come after the dharma. So you must put dharma first. And if you do that this lifetime, you'll be born next time knowing that it should come first. And the lifetime after that, knowing that it comes first. Till finally, dharma just gives you transcendence. Wealth and desires leave you. And you're left in just this fine fettle condition called equanimity or yogic balance. Like them, the Daivas. The Daiva Devis and Devas. Daiva Devi Deva. So don't allow money to take over everything. Everyone probably knows that that's the truth as they're handling this stuff. Sri Ramakrishna said, anyone who handles money gets the distortion of money. Doesn't matter who they are. So if that's even true of all these beings, if they handled money, which is why Sri Ramakrishna would drop coins, when they're handed to him, it would actually burn his skin. Somebody offered him 1 billion rupees once and he fainted. Know that story out of the gospel? Woke up and said, don't ever do that again. You'll spoil my yogic equipoise. Money would ruin everything. So what's more important to him, God or money? God or mammon? Isn't it a teaching that is thousands of years old, even in the Christian tradition, God and mammon? And what did he say about it? It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle and so forth than a rich man to get to heaven. All these teachings are about renouncing the world and its preoccupation with wealth, power, domination, basically occult powers. There are 8 of them. Trying to do fantastic things that outstrip the laws of gravity and so forth. These are wastes of time when you should be spending your effort on spiritual attainments. Store up wealth in heaven, right? Not here on earth. So these are, doesn't it sound sort of like Dharma drops? Jesus and Buddha sort of concurring on that, even though they were 550 years apart. Dharma drops, store up your treasures in heaven. Yeah, these were souls that were realized. One wasn't a Christian and the other a Buddhist. Those didn't exist in their time. Well, Buddhism existed by the time Christ came along. But in their own times, they didn't have a religion around them. Men did that later. That's why I say, if you have a Bible or a Quran, and get a good translation of it, be an ant. Sri Ramakrishna was told, well, what do we do about the scriptures? Not only of our own, but other religions. He said, well, be an ant. And they said, what do you mean? He said, well, when you're at a picnic, you see, you put down food, and some sugar mixes with some sand there. You see it by the side of the blanket. And you notice it, oh, you spilled some sugar, or some honey or whatever. And then you go swimming, and you come back to picnic afterwards, and the ant has come and taken all the sugar granules and left all the sand. So start thinking, well, what did he say? What does that mean? That if you read the scriptures, take the granules of sugar, the essence, and leave the non-essence aside, Because he concluded by saying every scripture has a mixture of sand and sugar in it. And the only time that wouldn't apply would be when the scripture is of a non-dualistic kind. And there are very sparse words in those. Om pramadna nasandeyaha kim karishyami vrittiman utpadyante vilayante buddhischa yata jale. That's all I have to say. Back to samadhi. See? So the non-dual scripture means ignorance is not real. So how can it cause you any real doubt? He's saying doubt isn't real. The doubt in your mind's not real, but you're thinking it to be real because it plagues you, see. But ignorance isn't real, so the brooding that comes from ignorance can't be real. Only truth is real. Only Brahman is real. So if you know this, then what does a yogi do with this knowledge? Because he too has samskars in his mind. They're not rusty, probably. And maybe they're not even coagulated into bits of iron. They might be individual, good samskars they're called, you see. The desires to serve beings, right? The desires to read the scriptures, those still persist in his mind maybe. And he can transfer them to you. So what does he do with all these things that are coming from his mind? He lets them rise day to day, spontaneously. Udpadjante vilayante buddhischa yata jale. Yata jale, like water. Buddhist, like bubbles. He lets them rise like bubbles in water and dissolve back into water, day by day. And if he has a bubble that won't dissolve at the end of the day, he does his sadhana, because that's a bit of rust, corrosion that's about to form. So he just thinks about it. Ignorance is unreal. Can't cause me any real doubt. I'm doing away with that right now. And then tomorrow morning I'm going to check and see if it went away. If it didn't, I'll apply that same salt solution again to do away with it until it's gone. So nothing can persist in my mind anymore. Nothing. Form or formlessness, wisdom or ignorance, duality or non-duality, with form, beyond form, none of that's there anymore. What does it sound like? Being beyond the real and the unreal? Advaita, Satori, Samadhi, Asampragyata, Nirvikalpa. That's what it sounds like. And so that's the means to attaining that, if it could be called an attainment. It's just really in the return to your own nature, you see, which always was and always will be. How did I wander away from that? Well, I did it because I let a bubble rise, and I didn't dissolve it back in this mind that's so obstinate, that would produce something like that in me. I don't agree. I reject that. I'll practice and show it to be otherwise. So all of this coming out of allowing money instead of service to become the main aim of earthly life. Well, it's not just ranting and raving about money. It's also about what you can do instead of money. How about service? Let's say if you have money, why don't you put it at the service of some good cause? Like what? Like spreading the Dharma, like teaching kids to meditate, like holding scriptural classes in Jnana Yoga. There's many things you can do. Just reverse all of these nails, and you'll find out that that's plenty of grounds for you to go and do beneficial works for the highest good of humanity. So turn your money that way. And this is probably all the more clear, seeing what's going on out there with money, that your politicians are even rich, immeasurably rich. What are they doing in power? Money. You can almost buy your way into anything. Same with the priestcraft. Lots of money in some of these religions puts them above the suffering and the lowly and the fallen. So they won't even give any money towards that. They'll put it towards war. Religion will put money towards war. to support its own claims of being the only right religion. That's how demented they are. When people are sleeping outside in the streets of the church, give them a little soup. That going to help? So this all has to be rethunk, you see, and reoriented under the mantle or umbrella of the Dharma. And what is the best thing to do? At least be heroic about it. And maybe then you'll get some clues from the divine. The last one here is leaving work undone, incomplete, or abandoned due to spiritual practices. So get too far into sadhana. Well, sadhana, doing the mantra and so forth, the great seers have said this is a means to an end. You don't want to become a professional student, right? In college, you want to graduate. It's the same in spiritual life. You don't want to become a professional sadhaka, where all you're doing is spiritual practice and austerities is all you're doing. That sometimes can even ruin your health. So there's a balance to everything. So you turn around and you serve with what you know. You turn around and you serve with what you have, money and knowledge. You turn around and serve by how you meditate. And that's karma yoga to a T. You see? That brings it all to a T. Back full circle. Now I haven't taken these yogas necessarily in an order because it's very hard to do that. But I would say in most cases you start with jnana. You remove the ignorance from your mind. And then bhakti shows up. And the love of God is now purified from the mind's rust. And it can be real love now. Then with that you go and meditate. And you realize meditation with eyes open and with eyes closed. That is, meditation while you're sitting and meditation while you're in action leads you to karma yoga. So this is kind of the way you would see it in this day and age. Start with getting rid of your ignorance. That's your individual rust. And it's in your family. And then it's in your city. And then it's in your church. And then it's in your politics. And it's in your business. And finally it's in your ancestors. That's why they're coming back without a clue. That's why they can't help you during your life. Or if they helped you, it was just some little modicum of a help along the way. See, it wasn't a blaze of light gotten from the avatar of the age. You only get that from Vivekananda singing something like Om Shtapakaya Cha Dharmasya Sarva Dharma Swarupine Avatara Vadishtaya Ramakrishna Yate Namaha Om Namah Shri Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya Namo Namaha. Then Om Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya. So you get those blazes of light from him and from his children, his precious spiritual children, sons and daughters, and from Ishvara form you meditate upon, and from the saints and the seers, and from holy company that passes you, Guru passes you on to holy company and gives you a mantra, which this rust will dissolve within one lifetime at least. You want to make sure that's what you do. If you're a spiritual aspirant, this lifetime, this has to end. This vague, unclear love affair with matter has to end. And I need to be myself again. Not mammon, God. Not matter, Atman. And when you can put that to an end and say so and declare so, then those bubbles will quit rising, you see, interrupting your oneness with Brahman. Innate oneness with Brahman. So we have covered 2 charts and even looked at Swami Shananduji's sayings to kind of preface them. And we're coming now to our end. We'll end a few minutes early with the chat. But before we head for next Sunday's class, remember to look at your notes on this and strengthen up your resolve in your practice about this, day to day, even maybe more than day to day, because there are kinds of beings who are animalistic, who are doing a day-to-day practice, but maybe it's not minute to minute yet, hour to hour, breath to breath. We want to be more like lifetime to lifetime, living in divinity in a state where birth, life, and death actually don't exist anymore. It's like waking, dreaming, and deep sleep don't exist anymore. You're just in one state of pure conscious awareness, homogeneous, and unalloyed, and uninterrupted. Om Dhanirgrahitva Upanishadam Mahastram Saram Yupasanashita Sanjayita Ayam Yatad Bhavakatena Chitasa Laksham Tave Aksharam Somya Viddi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Taking that mighty weapon furnished by the Upanishads and other non-dual scriptures, fasten to it the arrow of mind, made sharpened by thoughts of reality alone. Then, drawing full strength, O student, release that arrow and penetrate the mark, the eternal Brahman. Om Asato, Om Asato Ma Sadgamoya, Tamaso Ma Joitir Gamoya, Mritshor Ma'amritam Gamaya, Abira Abira Mayiti, Rudrayate Dakshinamukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all.